Hi, gay. It's Maxie. I hope you've all enjoyed your Pride Month and had a safe and gay time celebrating. Now, as Pride Month and our Pride miniseries comes to a close, we're unfortunately faced with a dark turn in the U.S. with the absolutely criminal overturning of Roe v. Wade last week. This decision affects not only women, but the precedent it sets and the potential ensuing events affect everyone. Access to abortion is healthcare, and no governing body has the right to regulate anyone's body. That being said, this week we'd like to highlight a couple of organizations. As born and raised Carolinians, we encourage you to check out and donate to the Carolina Abortion Fund if you live in the Carolinas and want to support a local abortion fund. If you don't live in the Carolinas, we encourage you to check out abortionfunds.org and find local organizations in your area who need your support. And the links to both of those organizations can be found in the description below. Lastly, just please look out for each other. It's a dangerous time for all of us, and we can only trust each other. So please, please just stay safe, stay gay, and love each other. Hello,
Hello.
I'm Maxie,
Hi, I'm Carolyn.
and this is Mutable Immutables, the show where we quibble queerly.
Yeah, and exchange pleasantries.
Yes.
What's up?
Yeah.
Max.
I'm melting right now. There's a heat wave in Seattle. It's like
Nice.
like 80 some degrees or whatever, and we don't have AC. Um, which is brutal.
Love that
but
for you.
shout out to Dirty Squirrel.
Okay, that scared me.
I got this cute shade fan from them yesterday at Pride. So shout out to Dirty Squirrel.
Okay.
Yeah. How are you?
Totally smacked the mic with that fan.
Oop.
I am okay. So here's the story. Max and I tried to record. So today is Sunday, June 26th. We tried to record this episode on Saturday, June 25th. I could not hold it together. But I said that I was going to finish out this Pride series, and we're going to finish out this Pride series because the way people used to organize is how we should be organizing still. So draw your own conclusions. Right?
Yeah. So today we are going to be talking about the first official, or what is recognized as the first official Pride celebration in the U.S. But before that, we're going to talk about kind of the context of the time and what led up to it, because there were a lot of different factors that led into this celebration needing to happen. And
Yes.
Carolyn, our wonderful resident professional researcher, has actually done quite a bit of legitimate research. So I'm going to let her take it away.
Professional amateur, just so that I can have plausible deniability. No,
Right.
I do try to take my research seriously, and so, I try to be thorough. Okay, so communism. So after World War II, basically starts the Cold War, and like the second Red Scare. The first Red Scare was like in the late 20s and 30s, with those dirty socialist New Deal policies. But the Communist Party of the United States actually reached its peak membership of 75,000 members in 1940 and 41, coming out of the Depression. So in 1947, we get the Truman Doctrine. Federal employees start getting screened for loyalty, and this pretty much starts the screening of people's personal lives. Like federal employees, Hollywood. We'll get to all that.
And this was a
But
really
in
invasive time, right? Like people didn't have a whole lot of privacy because it was very much like a who can you trust kind of situation, right?
Yeah, so and we're gonna get into how these were like obviously secret societies at the beginning. But yeah, you're not allowed to be a communist in the United States. You're just not. You weren't then, you're not now. You just are not allowed to, regardless of what they tell you. Um, so in 1950, the State Department declares the homosexuals a security risk because of vulnerability to blackmail. As in, like, if somebody found that out about your personal life, they could use it to blackmail you. Um, the first time I read this, I read it as gays like to gossip. They're vulnerable to.
That's how I read it too when I saw this. I was like, yeah, that's totally true.
But I think what they mean is the first, where it's like somebody would hold that against you in order to have you do whatever.
Gays do love to gossip, though. Be careful.
We do, but yeah, I don't think that's what it's referring to. So this after the homos are declared a security risk, this leads to the Lavender Scare and even more police raids and like the cross-dressing laws for men and women. And then we get into McCarthyism, which, and like I'm giving like a very high level overview of what is obviously like a very like long and in-depth political issue and somewhat legal. So like, but this isn't the point. I'm just trying to put us on the timeline.
This was like a major tonal shift for the country as well.
Yeah.
This was like, and just how people acted and their opinions and shit like that. This was a major shift. So
yeah, I mean, we kind of really like underestimate how much World War II affected America. So McCarthyism. So this guy, just McCarthy, basically starts this like campaign where he's like, I've got the names of 200 people working in the federal government right now who are like actually members of the Communist Party.
Okay, anonymous.
So yeah, eventually there goes to be like this Hollywood blacklist that a lot of people have heard of, where there's like 300 names of like actresses, actors, like writers, that sort of thing, who they were either like suspected of being gay or otherwise perverted or like anti-American, basically. And so you got labeled as a communist and put on this blacklist. So some of the people that like you may know are Lucille Ball, Leonard Bernstein, Allen Ginsberg, Aaron Copland, Charlie Chapman, W.E.B. Du Bois, Lena Horne, Langston Hughes, and of course Pete Seeger. So this is where we're at in general society, and being gay is kind of wrapped up with being a communist or like being vulnerable to USSR spy,
like a national security threat.
Yeah, that was kind of the idea. So in 1950, this guy named Harry Hay organizes what eventually becomes the Mattachine Society. Now, I have decided, because when I tried to do this yesterday, it was a lot. So I've decided I'm just going to go over the movement. So I'm going to mention a lot of names and not really do biographies on them. But that doesn't mean I'm supporting all these people. Like, absolutely not. Like, the organizations did a lot of great things. Some of the people who did great things ended up doing really gross things. So
yep, time
Harry
for
Hay
another weekly refresher. We're just reporting what we've learned. None of this is endorsement.
Professional amateur journalists. Yeah.
Yep. Journalistas.
So fuck this guy, but he starts what it starts as the Bachelors for Wallace in support of this like third party progressive party candidate, Henry A. Wallace, who was also in favor of like anti-war movements and like racial and gender equality, that sort of thing. So he started this little group to support this candidate. He eventually called it like Bachelors Anonymous to kind of coincide with Alcoholics Anonymous. Like that's the thing you'll see a lot, is people starting movements that are kind of like referencing other movements or like making a little bit of a nod to them. So that's kind of that. So eventually their what do you call it? Like their statement, I guess, their mission statement was to be an international fraternal order to serve as a service and welfare organization devoted to the protection and improvement of society's androgynous minority. So, this guy, Harry Hay, he meets his partner Rudy Gernreich, who ends up being like a fashion icon, especially for like women's clothing and like making the first bikini tops that didn't have bras built in, like really cool, like improvements to the fashion world. So look him up for sure.
Good for him.
So I know. So I also didn't go into any of his personal life. So if he's done bad shit, that's not what I'm referring to. I don't
Professional
know.
amateur journalistas.
Thank you. So those two get together with this other couple, and they well, not another couple. I think it's like 3 other gay guys. And they hold their first meeting in November of 1950. They call it the Society of Fools. So in April, a couple months later, they gain a few more members, and they change their name to the Mattachine Society. So you should look them up because it's pretty cool. It refers to this medieval French secret society called like the Sociétés Joyeuses. How do you say that?
Société Joyeuse. Yeah.
Joyeuse. I minored in French. It means nothing. So it was these like masked like farmers and peasants who they would wear masks for anonymity, of course, and then they were empowered to criticize the ruling monarchs with impunity. That's a direct quote. But yeah, they would basically like stage plays and like choreograph dances.
This is literally anonymous, just like medieval French anonymous.
There's nothing new in this world. This is what I keep learning over and over again. There is nothing new on this planet.
It's cyclical. That's why bell bottoms are back.
I feel like bell bottoms have like come back and gone away already. I don't even know. I don't keep up with the fashions. Okay, so the Mattachine Society, it's set up like a communist organization where it's got like cells, oaths of secrecy, different membership tiers based on service, and of course they're like all anonymous using pseudonyms. That's like what we saw with like the Daughters of Bilitis, which we'll get to, that sort of thing. So pseudonyms, drag names, all that sort of thing. So Harry Hay gets officially exiled from the Communist Party of the United States because of his orientation being a security risk, but he remains a lifelong friend of the people. But this is kind of where Mattachine Society kind of split with the Communist Party roots and became pretty much just about gay men's rights, basically. So spring of 1952, one of the founding members, Jennings, is arrested for lewd behavior in MacArthur Park was empty. MacArthur Park. Instead of quietly pleading guilty, what? It's Donna Summer. I can't not acknowledge.
I wasn't hating.
Instead of just quietly pleading guilty, which was kind of just what you did to avoid like the public humiliation, sort of. The society like saw it as sort of an opportunity to rally around him and address the issue of police entrapment. And they formed this committee called the Citizens Committee to Outlaw Entrapment. Very on the nose. They started getting actually a lot of public support for this. The jury deadlocked, and they considered it a win. So, yeah. Okay. But this, like, for one thing, gave it a little bit of press, but also, like, a better perception in the eyes of many. So membership in California by May of 1953 is at over 2,000 in this branch, with as many as 100 people joining like a typical group session.
Oh, wow.
So earlier, a couple months prior, this group had split off to form One Incorporated. So One Incorporated accepted women. Imagine that. And they team up with the Daughters of Bilitis, and they help them to publish The Ladder in 1956, and we'll get to the Daughters and The Ladder, I promise. So One Incorporated is the first LGBT organization to have an office, which kind of served as one of the first LGBT community centers. They had one magazine which ran from 1953 to 1969 as the first pro-gay publication. It was declared lewd by the United States Post Office Department, and they refused to distribute it. But one magazine sued and actually won the case in 1958.
I gotta say, that's a pretty long run for like an explicitly queer magazine in this time
This
period.
is what I'm saying. Like, grab your fucking friends, meet some other people. They don't have to be your friends. They just have to be, like, in the same movement. And fucking write a blog with current events. Like, that's our modern solution. Is, like, everybody becomes an expert in something. Like translate the legalese for us dumbasses and distribute a blog or something. Like, that's the modern version of what these people were doing.
Some people do that on TikTok too. They like will translate. I know your feelings on TikTok, but like this phenomenon is kind of existing a little bit in that form, which I think is cool.
I'm going to take your word for it. So they also established the Institute of Homophile Studies. They held classes and even held conferences and even put out a quarterly academic journal. So not only just like a magazine, like a culture magazine, but they were also doing like an academic journal on the issues as well. And this is right around, this is right around the time, I think in like 1950, homosexuality got diagnosed as a psychopathic disease, whatever it was. I feel so disrespectful when I'm like, oh, whatever that was, but like I literally just don't know anything about it. And that's my own like shortcomings.
Well, it was like people were doing lobotomies and stuff then too. It was all a mess.
Lobotomy. Now I guess I'll have to tell him that I got no cerebellum. So anyway, so most of the members, like we said, of the Majesty Society were communist, but like the Red Scare is making it more dangerous to have these views publicly or even be associated with it. Especially when the CPUSA like excommunicated the gays. So it's not like the Communist Party was a pro-gay organization, you know?
Right.
Even though they kept them as a friend of the party or whatever. So specifically, these two people, this is spelled wrong, but Hal Call was his name, of San Francisco, and Ken Burns of Los Angeles. Not the Ken Burns who does the really cool documentaries. Just want to say that. Not the same person.
So the Instagram filter guy. Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Early days of Instagram, there was a filter called Ken Burns. It might still be there. I don't know.
I do not even remember that.
I was making a joke.
Wow. Okay.
It's fine.
Oh. Okay. Sorry. I don't know what you're referencing. So these two, they are pushing to clarify loyalty to the USA. And by that, they mean like cut off any association with the Communist Party. In protest of this, the five founders reveal their identities and step down in order to just like preserve the sanctity of what the original organization was setting out to do. So like that's brave as fuck. Depending on who you ask, this was either it was either unsuccessful because how much the membership dropped in the Majesty Society, or it was successful because they appealed to the Allies and public opinion and, you know, may have raised the public consciousness a little bit. So I mean,
they put themselves on the map and they like made a name for themselves. So for the time period, it might be successful.
Yeah. But is it because they also like cut off the roots of what the society was originally meant to do? I think that's the opposite argument. So the original centralized organization officially dissolves in 1961. The San Francisco chapter keeps the name the Majesty Society. The New York branch becomes like the Majesty Society of New York Incorporated, things like that. I think there's like one in Chicago, one in Los Angeles. I don't know. And like by the 60s, they're getting to be known, like the new group is getting to be known for being, again, too traditional and non-confrontational. But also in 1973, Hal Call opens a porno theater. So like,
well, weird. Also, one of Harvey Milk's ex-partners was part of the New York Majesty Society, and Harvey Milk broke up with him because he was too non-conservative in his demonstrations and provoked the police too much.
Yeah.
Maybe just different standards.
Well, yeah. So the society is split between like the people like those people who are super traditional and non-confrontational and dress code, no PDA, all that stuff, and then the people who thought that they should include more radical elements in their activism, such as opposition to this has the Vietnam War, but honestly, like war in general, like bombing of Cambodia, Korean War, all that stuff, uh, and inclusion in the sexual revolution, and that's like sort of a sub issue is like the people who want like gay sex to be normalized, which is one camp, and then the ones who are like, no, we don't want to be associated just like sexually. So I don't know. I'm not a gay man in the 50s. So okay, so that's all we're gonna go over for that particular society. But now we're gonna get into the Daughters of Bilitis, who rule at first, at least. So formed in San Francisco in 1955 as an alternative to lesbian bars, which were subject to constant police raids, of course. Like this was right after the two raids happened in one night. Tommy's and Adler's were two lesbian bars owned by the same person. They both got raided on the same night, things like that. So this couple, Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon, complain to their gay friends that they don't know any other lesbians. The gay friends get them in contact with this other couple, and one of the two women, Rosalie Baumberger, suggests creating like a social club. So these two couples and two other couples, so 8 people, start meeting in Rose and Rosemary's home. And this is what keeps like making me tear up because it's just like I love this snippet, but like one of the most important priorities they had was their meetings had to have space to dance because
Aww.
you're not allowed to like dance with the same sex person in public. So it was not only like privacy from the government, but also just like gawkers and like family people who wanted to ask questions when people are just trying to exist. So the goals ended up being both education on our own history because they were like, I know nothing about other lesbian history, but like there has to be more of us. So education on our own history, but also like support for women who weren't able to come out for whatever reason.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Gay people are always going to look after other gay people. And regardless of how the times change, like that's why it's so important to have like that found network and your found family because like you gotta.
So what we're gonna find out, what we are gonna find out actually is that white cis gays will look out for other white cis gays.
Yeah, valid. Yeah, but still community. You know, I'm not defending that, but I am saying community is important.
It's just an ongoing theme of just never helping lesbians and never helping trans people and never helping AFAB people at all. Also, real quick, if I never have to hear the words birthing person or person with vagina ever again, it'll be too soon. You're allowed to just call us people. You're allowed to just say people. I'll get off my soapbox. So, Daughters of Bilitis is named after this obscure fictional bisexual contemporary of Sappho. The Daughters was meant to invoke the Daughters of the American Revolution, which is, of course, a super conservative organization. If you ask, what's his name, Phil Oakes, it's the Dykes of the American Revolution. Moving on. So they were kind of torn between this need to expand, this need for new members, but also like really needed to keep their secrecy, keep their privacy. So they decided they need to be more organized. They elected Dell as the president, and they even filed for nonprofit status under this extremely vague description in 1957. So people like they would say like, we could have been a cat lovers club, we could have been a poetry club.
I was about to say this
so vague.
Just gives like book club to me.
Like
would
book
be
club,
the easiest
exactly.
Cover story, yeah.
Exactly. So. Some original members leave. 2 of them create 2 more secret societies. The quote is, they knew that without the support to develop the self-confidence necessary to advocate for one's rights, no social change would be possible for lesbians. And I totally agree with that. All types of groups like that are needed. So the Daughters of Bilitis, minus those people, is at 16 members just after their first year, and 5 chapters, one in Los Angeles, the original in San Francisco, New York, Chicago, and Rhode Island by 1959. So they're not allowed to advertise in the local paper, so they begin to distribute this magazine called The Ladder in October of 1956, of course with help of One Incorporated, One Magazine. So this was the first nationally distributed lesbian magazine, as well as the first to publish statistics on lesbians after their own surveys. So they would like fill out surveys and like report on the data themselves, which is cool. And only 2 copies of the subscription list existed. So like there was literally just 2 people knew who was subscribing to it. It was kind of an offset of the Mattachine Society, so they followed their lead with the assimilationist views. At the first national conference in 1960 in San Francisco, 200 women came, as well as San Francisco Police Department to make sure nobody's wearing men's clothing. But the Daughters of Bilitis would make sure that everybody was wearing dresses, tights, and if you were wearing slacks, it had to be women's slacks. This includes undergarments. In 1960, the Ladder also starts getting reader letters complaining about this emphasis on conformity in the Daughters of Bilitis. But in 1961, so not only has the largest San Francisco raid happened and 100 people are arrested, but also there's this Chicago raid that happens right around the same time that makes the women arrested disrobed to make sure that they're not wearing men's underwear. So, like, just a humiliation act of it, just, like, because you can. So the Ladder starts urging people to be more proactive, but I guess provocative too. So at the second convention in 1962, the national president encourages patience with the justice system. So that just kind of tells you that like the leadership is on a very different page than the rest of the organization. In 1963, they start getting anonymous donations from Pennsylvania. Like it's just a pen name, Pennsylvania. Barbara Giddings becomes the editor of the Ladder. She is the head of the New York branch of the Daughters. She puts a specific emphasis on visibility and like definitely wants to align more with ECHO, which we'll get to, but it's like the East Coast homophile organizations. So she's like, we need to be out there as lesbians. Like we need to not be hiding. We need people to know about us, that sort of thing.
Well, this was also, right, wasn't this around the same time that there were kind of 2 diverging ideologies within the queer community at the time? There was the assimilationist, and then there was the loud and radical types of ideologies.
Exactly. Yeah, so we see this kind of in quite a few organizations. Like later we'll see it in the Gay Liberation Front. Like there's always that divide. Mm-hmm. There's still that divide. So 1964, Del and Phyllis joined the Council on Religion and Homosexuality, and I put this in here because we talked about this in the AIDS crisis episode. So this is having to do with the San Francisco Stonewall, which happened on January 1st of 1965, so New Year's Eve, where they were holding a private party. They had gotten police permission, but then the police showed up anyway, had like huge headlights of on people, took their pictures, arrested 4 lawyers, that sort of thing. So the Daughters of Bilitis, like as an organization, has a statute against aligning with any outside organization to prevent any communist influence. But they did collaborate with them on the night of San Francisco Stonewall on January 1st, New Year's Eve, 1965. Previously that year, Cleo Bonner had been elected president. She was an African-American lesbian woman, and the Daughters of Bilitis started to draw inspiration from the civil rights movement, which the fact that they weren't already allying themselves in that fight until it affected them, like, tells you everything you need to know. So put off by the fact that a lot of these homophile organizations, specifically like the Mattachine Society, later the Gay Liberation Front, a lot of these sorts of things, they're almost exclusively focused on AMAB issues, men's issues. They started identifying more with second wave feminism. They were like, we have more in common with like second wave feminism than we do with the gay rights movements, because like their interests are not the same, right? So Ladder starts focusing more on feminism than gay rights. They like remove a bunch of like lesbian columns, that sort of thing. Um, they start focus on aligning with the second wave feminism. They lose the Pennsylvania anonymous donations, and they eventually stop publications after 14 years. No, sorry, they stopped publication, but after 14 years, the original Daughters of Bilitis organization ended, although chapters continued on till 1995.
Oh, wow, till 95. Wow.
Yeah. So ECHO, which I mentioned earlier, East Coast Homophile Organizations, was created in January of 1962 to facilitate the coordination between the Mattachine Society, Daughters of Bilitis, and Janus Society, which I'm realizing I forgot to talk about, but I think I'm going to talk about it later. Yes, okay. I'll go ahead. So the Janus Society was formed in Philadelphia in 1962. It was a group of gay and lesbian activists that started meeting in 1961 in hopes of becoming an official Mattachine chapter, but they never were certified for whatever reason. But they did start publishing Drum magazine in 1964 as a continuation of their newsletter. So it got like widely distributed, and it was like fiction, poetry, also like musings, news, that sort of thing.
So like a long form zine, right? Just a culture magazine.
A long form zine is just a magazine.
I realized that when I said it.
Oh my god. So this was like trying to align all the sort of like what it says, the East Coast Homophile Organization. So it was founded in Philadelphia, but it included the New York City and the Washington, D.C. chapters of Mattachine, the Daughters of Bilitis in New York, who was, of course, the president was Barbara Giddings, who we talked about earlier, and then also the Janus Society in Philadelphia. And they decide that Philadelphia will be like a central meeting location for all these places, so do it there. So they dissolved in 1966, but they were reborn essentially under NACHO, which is North American Conference on Homophile Organizations, under a subsidiary of Eastern Regional Conference of Homophile Organizations. So just different divisions of the homos. By 1969, ERCO includes the original ECHO members, so those Daughters, Janus, Mattachine, as well as New York's Council on Equality for Homosexuals, the Homosexual Action League in Philadelphia, the Student Homophile League, Hartford's Institute for Social Ethics, and the West Side Discussion Group. Although they organized the first Pride marches, they disorganized pretty much right after in 1970 in favor of the more radical organizations popping up as a result of Stonewall. So those are the three organizations that form ECHO, that form ERCO, that organize the first Pride March. So, April 17th and 18th of 1965, there's protests, I think, I can't remember if it's the State Department or the White House. There's protests, pickets, against when the news broke that in Cuba there were detention centers and work camps imprisoning homosexuals. So these are the protests that eventually inspire the annual reminders. And we'll get to that in a second. But there's a series of pickets in summer of 65 on like the White House, the Civil Service Division, the Pentagon, and the State Department that ECHO organized. So May 7th at the White House, July 4th at Independence Hall, and October 3rd at the White House. So the one at July 4th and Independence Hall, people just end up coming back the next year, and it became the annual reminder protests. So it was, again, dress code, no PDA, like we're trying to look exactly like straight people. It was supposed to be like the annual reminder that like the gays still don't have the same civil rights, that sort of thing. So the idea came from Craig Rodwell, who is he started the Oscar Wilde legacy bookstore or something that housed the hymn, which was homophile youth movement. He also dated Harvey Milk, so he's what inspired Castro Camera, which is like a gay business that also served as like outreach organization and like community center. So he is the one who like brings the idea to Echo, who then organized the first one in a couple months. So a couple of Yes. Okay. So a couple of weeks after Stonewall happened, 500 people marched from Washington Square to Sheridan Square Washington Square Park to Sheridan Square as a gay power demonstration. So that's June of '69. This is a couple weeks after that. There's like march from Washington Square Park. Then July 4th is when the annual reminder always happens. So at that one, everybody was kind of like hyped up, and they were like, silent picketing is like not it. Like there's just been riots like all week in New York. Like we're not just gonna sit here and politely picket Independence Hall. So Martha Shelley of the Daughters of Bilitis of New York City suggests doing a commemoration of Stonewall at a Mattachine Society meeting right after the uprising instead of the annual reminders. So then Craig Rodwell, his partner Fred Sargent, Ellen Broidy, and Linda Rhodes draft a resolution for ERCO, and in the November meeting of 1969, Ellen presented the resolution, which passed a motion to move it to the Christopher Street during the last weekend of June and holding parallel protests across the country. Everybody voted yes except for the Mattachine, who abstained. So then it's settled that the annual reminder protests would basically become the Christopher Street Liberation Day March, which eventually becomes the Gay Liberation Day March, the Gay Freedom Day March, Pride, basically. Yeah. There's a million different names. So the planning for the Christopher Street Liberation Day March starts in Craig's apartment on Bleecker Street, and they're calling it the Christopher Street Liberation Day Umbrella Committee. Yeah, who includes Rodwell and Sargent, Broidy, Michael Brown, Marty Nixon, and Foster Gunnison Jr. They would solicit donations and representatives from other homophile organizations. They like got the Oscar Wilde Memorial Bookstore mailing list, that sort of thing, just to kind of like garner attention, get everybody rounded up. Other notable organizers that ended up joining were Judy Miller, Jack Waluska, Steve Jerry, and Brenda Howard, and she's the coolest. She's a bisexual polyamorous lady. She's the mother of Pride. She's the one who had the idea to do like the events in the weeks leading up to the march. And then her, Donnie the Punk, who just has such a sad story if you ever get a chance to look into him. So her, Donnie the Punk, Stephen Donaldson, and L. Craig Schoonmaker popularized Pride as the name for the activities. There was also this guy named Tom Higgins, who was a member of Free in Minneapolis in 1971, and he actually created gay pride as like a term instead of just pride. I don't know. And that was the one where it was like something erotic expression, something repression, or I don't know, something like that. I talked about it before. So, okay, so eventually, this guy named Michael Kodos replaces Dick Leitch as the president of the Mattachine Society, and they join the efforts for the Liberation Day Parade. So, right after Stonewall in early July, the Gay Liberation Front forms. August 7th, they host a protest at the Women's House of Detention in Greenwich Village. September 12th, they protest the coverage of gay people by the Village Voice. October 31st in San Francisco, they protest the Examiner, where employees get up to the roof and dump printer ink on the protesters, who then use the ink to write their slogans and like put handprints all up and down the buildings. It becomes known as the Friday of the Purple Hand, or the Bloody Friday of the Purple Hand. Which is kind of fun.
I kind of love that.
I know, right? Exactly. So also in 1970, then Martha Shelley, Lois Hart, Carla J., and Michaela Griffo formed the Lavender Menace and drag queen caucus of Gay Liberation Front, which is, of course, led by Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, form STAR, which is Street Transvestite Action something Revolution.
Oh. Yeah, it was something like that. It was specifically trans focused, yeah.
Right. But so you start to again see these splinter groups based on ideologies. but that's it. So basically, that year they held one in New York City, the Christopher Street Liberation Day Parade, the first San Francisco Pride, Los Angeles Pride, who actually named themselves Christopher Street West, and then Chicago Gay Liberation March. And then here we are now. In 2019, New York Pride was the largest gathering of gays ever. And then the government misappropriated and completely mismanaged a virus. So
Yeah, that did.
there you have it.
But you know what? Every year it gets bigger and better, and I don't know. I love it, like, both because I do love being, like, surrounded by queer people, but also, like, I don't know. I like this is superficial, but I love June as a month. I think June is one of the best months out of the year, and I love that I can dedicate basically the entire month to this whole theme of, like, queerness and pride and identity. My birthday is also in June, so I get to, like, kind of tie that in there, and it's really fun. It's like Christmas in the summertime for me, except this time it's gay Christmas, and I don't have to put up with all the, like, Jesus rhetoric. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's like I understand and recognize that things are not as comfortable as they should be, and, like, that we're not where we need to be in a lot of areas, not just queer areas, but in a lot of areas in general. And that, you know, all the splinters from these original, I guess we'll call them pride groups, you know, all signify that there was not unity in the group, and so I think it's important to keep that unity focused. That being said, and I think I've said this in episodes past too, I think it is important to take this time to, you know, celebrate what we can when we can, and then channel that energy the rest of the year into, you know, doing the work that needs to be done. But I think it's important that we do celebrate, because otherwise, like, it's just bleak all the time, you know?
Yep. So yeah, like I said, I was gonna go to Pride this weekend for the first time ever, but of course, Supreme Court decision happened Friday morning. I was not particularly in the mood to go celebrate anything. I do totally understand why people wanted to, but it was a rough weekend. So yeah, but I feel like some of the most important things we can do right now is connect with people in real life and get off the internet and meet your neighbors and form community with them and help them out and babysit their children and disseminate information to them. And yeah,
it's also, yeah, it's a very, very tricky time. It's a very delicate time right now, but it is, like, I don't want to discourage anyone from celebrating Pride if you feel up to it, because I do think that's important. But then at the same time, like Carolyn said, I think it is important to, like now is absolutely the time to start looking into the resources that your community has, and start familiarizing yourselves, because, you know, who knows how long these organizations are, you know, gonna last, and who knows how, you know, what the future holds.
Yeah, but also, like, join organizations that already exist. Don't try to start your own.
Yeah, no, yeah. Unless you want to do, like, an underground secret support system for people who need rides to certain appointments, you know, look out for each other.
Sure. But also, like, don't let people steal your data. Okay. There's not much I want to say about the current state of things, just
Right.
because I can't. I'm tired, and you can draw your own conclusions about how I feel about everything. And maybe one day I will actually celebrate Pride.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we thank you all so much for listening to our Pride series. It has been a lot of fun to do. It's been great to actually do some research, which, in all honesty, I should have taken it upon myself to, you know, learn my own community's history a long time ago. But this has been an excellent opportunity to do that and get to talk about it with one of my closest friends. So I've had a lot of fun. I hope those of you listening have also enjoyed it. Maybe you've learned something new, maybe you didn't, but that's okay. And actually, we've been throwing this idea around. I think moving forward for the pod, I think we're going to take a kind of different direction from what we've been doing in the past. Like, we're probably still going to talk about drag race here and there since there's 1,000 seasons. But
there's 1,000 seasons.
But yeah, there's 1,000 seasons, and it's like literally like 3 of France just started yesterday, and then there's 2 or 3 more that start within the next couple months, and All Stars 7 isn't even finished. So, there's a lot going on there, and we are not affiliated with RuPaul or WoW Presents or anything like that. So we're not trying to be, like Race Chaser or whatever else pissed off. We just like the show a lot. But that being said,
we could never be Race Chaser.
We have had a lot of fun looking into the history of just queer history in general and how it kind of formed in the different areas that it did. So I think moving forward, we're going to do a couple different mini series on queer history in different cities across the U.S. and maybe even outside of the U.S. I'd be interested in learning that too.
Well, you can do the fucking research for that. My scope is limited.
We'll start with the U.S. and we'll see how we feel. But that being said, the month of July episodes might be a bit more sporadic. We've got some stuff going on. Me specifically, I'm gonna be moving and stuff. I'm gonna be moving apartments, and the only time I really have to do that is on the weekend. Yeah, so we're gonna try to keep episodes coming every Monday. But just follow us on social and make sure you've got your notifications on, that you followed the show, so you know when we do post our new episodes. What are you laughing at?
I'm sorry, I can't imagine somebody wanting to be notified
about our content.
No, some of my very best friends do have my personal post notifications on, but god damn it, I hope people aren't looking forward to hearing what I have to say.
I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Word. That's all I got. I'm tired.
Yeah. It's so hot. I'm so tired here too. And so you said this yesterday, but we scrapped that whole recording. But me, when it's a multi-day event, I go a little bit hard on the first day, and then I don't have any energy for the next day, and that's kind of what happened today. Been kind of dead, but
yep.
Yeah, it's been I was gonna say it's been a wonderful Pride Month, but they kicked that zinger in at the end there to kind of fuck everything up. But
there's been fucked up shit happening, but pay attention. They're really getting to the nitty gritty on the January 6th hearings, and also watch what's happening in stock market news, because things are kind of wild right now. Yeah, that's all.
Also, I mean, any time is a great time to do this, and I myself haven't done this, but now is a really, really good time, if you haven't already, to not only look into your local organizations and how you can support them, but also make sure you know what your rights are, because things are real crazy, and I don't think that's going to go away anytime super soon. So just make sure you know what your rights are, get some phone numbers memorized, plan to take care of yourself and protect yourself.
Stop putting your business on the internet.
That all being said, do you have any final thoughts, any final words, anything?
No, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
That's all I can do.
All right. Well, we thank you so much for listening. For those of you that have, if you want to connect with us, you can follow us on Instagram at Immutables. You can follow us on Twitter at ImmutablesPod. You can find us on YouTube, also Immutables. And we are available to listen to on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. And I don't say this every episode, but if you've enjoyed it, please rate and review us. Rate us 5 stars or whatever you think is fair, but 5 stars preferably.
Don't tell them that.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
All right. Bye.